The council meeting for February 11th, 2020 is now in session. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Our first item on the agenda is Councilmember Michael Dalla will lead us with the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Will you please rise?
So as I was looking for something to use for our invocation, I thought with elections coming up next week in the primaries that this would be somewhat appropriate. This is the excerpt from an opening prayer given by the Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver at the United States House of Representatives on January 3rd, 2019. May we temporarily hush our preoccupation with vexing considerations that deplete our energy and consume our hours to seek now favor from Thou, whose immaculate voting record demonstrates our need of Thy guidance. We pray, O Lord, for wisdom sufficient to lean not on our unaided privilege and power to embrace our summons to address the great challenges of this day that are fraught with tribalism at home and turbulence abroad. Thou, who has the whole world in his hand, to Thee we pray for inner resources to rise as a legislative body above political selfishness and then shrink to a level of humility and penitence that would be in harmony with Your will. When we leave this place, we will, with Your blessing, launch a bold attempt to become the architects of a kindlier nation that is purging itself of any and all prejudices which degrade the unmatched blessings You have awarded the people of this great nation. Receive now this prayer, O Lord. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Councilman Dalla. We'll proceed with the employee recognition. First is the recognition of Esther Mendoza from the Police Department Senior Administrative Assistant, 20 years of service. Dr. Brown?
All right, well, it's my honor to be able to recognize Esther Mendoza tonight for 20 years of service with the city of Schertz, and that's a rare thing for an employee to stay with the organization that much, but everybody knows what a great contribution you've made to the police department for all these years, and what a key member of our total team you are. A little bit about Esther. She started working for the city on November 1st, 1999. She worked in municipal court for approximately 4 years and then moved over to the police department, where she's been since then as the senior administrative assistant. Esther was born and raised in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, and grew up with 4 brothers and 1 sister. She has 3 daughters, Melissa, Monica, and Michelle, and has 2 beautiful grandchildren, Olivia, who is 8, and Brody, who is 6. Esther loves spending time with her family and her 3 dogs. She's also an avid collector of M&M stuff. And if you stop by her office, you'll see what we mean. Not only are we recognizing her for her 20 years of service, but unfortunately, she's leaving us, and she's retiring from the city. So you're just going to be missed so much for all you've done. She's moving to Florida so she can spend more time with her grandkids, and she can't wait for that. But Esther, you've been a fabulous addition to our city, and we just appreciate everything. So, on behalf of the city, I'd like to award you your 20-year pen.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you want to introduce your family and friends?
My husband Angel, my daughter Monica, and this is Melissa.
They're all here.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
they're all here.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you for coming tonight to recognize all of her great achievements.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Great. Want to say anything? Okay.
Ms. Mendoza, are you sure you don't want to say anything?
You don't want to say anything?
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you very much for all your years of service and, you know, the impact you had on our community. We really do appreciate it. The Blue Santa, everything else that you have done. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, Jim.
Okay, we'll continue with the recognition of Jimmy Hooks, Water, Wastewater Management, 30 years of service with the city. Dr. Brown?
Congratulations, Jimmy. So it's a great honor to be able to have two employees that we're recognizing for their long terms of service. But Jimmy Hooks has been with us for 30 years, and he's one of our longest tenured employees. Just a little bit about Jimmy. He was born in East St. Louis, Illinois, and he lived in Edwardsville, Illinois, until he was 15 before moving to Texas, and he graduated from Canyon High School in New Braunfels. He served in the Marine Corps, and when he came back to the city of Texas, or to the state of Texas, he was hired by the city of Schertz in December 1989 as a Serviceman 1 and was promoted to Serviceman 2 6 months later. He's moved up the chain of command since he was here, promoted to Foreman, Public Works Inspector, Environmental Water Quality Supervisor, Public Works Superintendent, and then Assistant Public Works Director. He also served as the interim Public Works Director until Suzanne came on board, and he now holds the position of Water and Wastewater Manager. Everybody that knows Jimmy knows that he's our expert on our water system. He knows where literally all the bodies are buried. So, Jimmy became the city's first certified floodplain manager in 2003 and has been designated as the city's floodplain manager ever since. He holds the TCEQ certifications in water and wastewater with a B groundwater license and a C wastewater operator's license. He's married to his wife, Glenda. They have one son, Troy Hansen, who is a police officer in Texas City, Texas, and two daughters, Nikki Hansen, who works for the city of Schertz as an animal control officer, and Brooke Hansen, who is statewide intake specialist, too, with the Department of Family and Protective Services. Jimmy got to witness his mother, Marion, become a U.S. citizen and vote for her very first time during the last presidential election. Jimmy's hobbies include hunting and camping, taking cruises to the Caribbean and Alaska, and for those who don't know, he raises very large tortoises. So he is a tortoise expert. So if you ever have any questions about tortoises, talk to Jimmy. He said they're getting too large and too expensive to maintain, however, so he's looking to sell them perhaps. But Jimmy, congratulations on this great milestone. We appreciate all that you do. You're a terrific member of our team. Have been for a long time. We look forward to many more years of service. I paused there for give him a chance to.
He smiled, too.
But,
It's getting better. Keep sure it's great.
we appreciate you, Jimmy. Congratulations.
Jimmy.
30 years, that's more than half my life. So I want to thank the city for putting up with me for the 30 years. Also, I want to thank council for hiring Dr. Brown. I want to thank Dr. Brown for hiring Charles Kelm. I want to thank Charles Kelm for hiring Suzanne Williams. And their support and leadership has been great this last year, and it's making sure it's great again. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Now, I can honestly say that Jimmy has personally seen the growth of Schertz, and we appreciate everything you've done for our city, Jimmy. Thanks again. All right, we'll continue with the city announcements and events. Upcoming city events, Charles, Mr. Kelm.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening. TxDOT will be conducting work on 1518 between First Street and Wiederstein Road in Selma starting January 29th. We will see alternating lane closures take place for the next 4 to 8 weeks. On Thursday, February 13th, a Northeast Partnership meeting will be held at 11:30 at Olympia Hills Golf Course and Conference Center. On Monday, the 17th of February, the city offices will be closed in observance of President's Day. On Tuesday, February 18th, we will have our chamber luncheon, 11:30 at the Civic Center, and then council on the go at 6 p.m. at Ray Corbett. I'm sorry, that will be actually at Fire Station 3. On Tuesday, February 25th, we'll have the city council meeting in the council chambers. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Kelm. Next, announcements or recognition by City Manager, Dr. Brown.
Nothing further tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Announcements and recognitions by the mayor. I just have one item. I just like to thank our public affairs. This past Thursday, they had an event at the Civic Center, and they had set up 60 chairs, and there was approximately 200 people that attended, and they quickly had to react and accommodate those 200 people. Appreciate all their efforts for that event. We'll continue with the hearing of residents. No one signed up, so we will move on to the consent agenda items. Okay, item number 1, the approval of the minutes of the special joint meeting of January 30th, 2020, and the minutes of the regular meeting of February 4th, 2020. Item number 2, ordinance number 20D05, ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinance of the City of Schertz, Texas, be amended by revising Article 5, Section 86-149, parking prohibited, regarding the establishment of no parking zones on FM 2252 on the approaches of the railroad track crossing and providing an effective date. This is also our first reading. Item number 3, resolution number 20R13, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing purchases not to exceed $125,000 with Caldwell Country Ford for the replacement of 3 trucks. Item number 4, resolution number 20R14, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing contracts totaling no more than $175,000 with C3 Environmental Construction, LLC, for the labor and related materials for various separate and unrelated concrete-related projects during the 2019-2020 fiscal year and other matters in connection therewith. And item number 5, resolution number 20R21, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a request for a Schertz Main Street Local Flavor Economic Development Grant for 816 Main Street in the City of Schertz, Texas, and related matters in connection therewith. Council, do any of these items need to be removed for separate action? Councilman Dalla?
Actually, I have 2 items, not necessarily to discuss, but on item number 3, resolution 20R13, I was looking at the wording of the resolution, and it's page 26 of the packet. On section 1 there, it says it's a typo on there that we need to correct. It says City Council hereby authorizes purchases with Caldwell County Ford not to exceed $7,125,000. We just need to correct that to $125,000. And then if nobody has any objection to it, I'd like to suggest that we add item number 6 to the consent agenda. It just deals with the no parking zone. It seems to be pretty straightforward.
Okay, that's item number 6 that wants to be added to the consent agenda items. That is ordinance number 20D03, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinance of the City of Schertz, Texas, be amended by revising Chapter 86, Article 5, Section 86-149, parking prohibited, removing the no parking zone on Green Ridge in the Fairhaven subdivision and providing an effective date. This is also the first reading. Council, any objections to moving item number 6? There's no objections, so we'll go ahead and amend the consent agenda items 1 through 6.
Whoa. I was just reading the amendment. I would like to discuss item number 6, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. There is an objection. We'll go ahead and just go with consent agenda items 1 through 5. Okay, Council, do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Councilman Dalla, second by Councilman Hayward. Council, any other comments? If none, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objections, motion passes. Okay. We'll continue with the action items. Item number 6, ordinance number 20D03, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving the Code of Ordinance for the City of Schertz, Texas, be amended by revising Chapter 86, Article 5, Section 86-149, parking prohibited, removing the no parking zone on Green Ridge in the Fairhaven subdivision and providing an effective date. Mr. James, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Some of you may recall that there is an emergency access gate between two subdivisions. That would be Fairhaven and Scenic Hills, which is a gated community. We had an issue previously with folks parking in the Fairhaven section, give you a bit of a feel, up by the gate. And that was a couple of things that we had a concern about. At that time, you may recall, we had a drainage problem where water would drain from the Fairhaven into the Scenic Hills. There were culverts or inlets on the side of the road. Part of the problem is cars would park over those grates, would limit the ability for water to get in them, would kind of disrupt the flow of the round, and additionally concerns at the time in terms of emergency access getting in and things like that. So previously, council approved a number of drainage projects to correct some of these issues. One was this project, and what it essentially did is it constructed a big inlet at the end kind of by the gate, which meant there was no longer a concern over drainage. The gates pull out sideways, and so again, it's not an issue for folks to park up on the curb next to the gate. So again, at this point, we're saying remove the no parking. It would allow these residents to park in front of their homes up by the curb. There's reference in the staff report that it's still not okay, as always, to park in the middle of the street in front of the gate. So they can park on the curb, can't park in the middle of the street because emergency vehicles have to get through. That'll obviously be an enforcement issue. But I know we've dealt with this homeowner before. She understands the situation. We may have a few times, but I'm not anticipating it to be a major deal. I think they'll be happy just to be able to park right back in front of their house. But with that, I can answer additional questions.
Okay.
Floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Scagliola?
Yeah, I was wondering, how exactly was the drainage issue resolved?
The curb inlets were replaced with a grade inlet that runs across the entire length of the street. If you want, because you may be up here longer than you want, John Nowak could explain the technical part of it, but essentially a big grate that runs across the entire length of the street that'll pick up flows, sheet flowing across the street.
Okay, sorry to make you get up, John. The other thing is, you're positive that parking two cars on either side won't impede an emergency vehicle? You still have enough room to get by.
So let me answer it this way. Right now, most of the length of the street, you can park on both sides of the street up by the curb. That leaves room, and we have that throughout our community. That leaves adequate width for emergency vehicles to get through. Now, I will say, if you've got somebody with a big dually truck, he's not up close to the curb on one end, you got the same thing, or a big kind of UPS truck on the other, it may lead to a tight squeeze. But again, if you have typical residential vehicles and they park up by the curb, it's a non-issue. I mean, we have that throughout the community.
Okay, I was just wondering if you had spoken with any of the HOAs about this, Scenic Hills or Fairhaven?
So we have previously had conversations with the Fairhaven folks about it. We haven't had a conversation, to my knowledge, with the Scenic Hills folks because it's not within their neighborhood that the no parking zone exists. But we have had a number of conversations with the HOA and some of the residents out there in the past. They expressed frustration that they couldn't park in front of their homes because of this situation with the drainage and with Scenic Hills. So no, we've not reached out to Scenic Hills, though, to have a conversation about it with them.
You're confident this won't cause any type of emergency response?
Let me be clear. If folks follow the law and they park within the required distance of the curb, that will not pose any issues. But I certainly can't sit up here and tell you that you won't have somebody who does something they're not supposed to, usual situation, What I will say is that's just as likely to happen up here as it is down here, as it is throughout the neighborhood to get to that location. And so it's no different than anywhere else in our community. And that's, I think, staff's perspective. I'm not trying to be evasive. I mean, again, I can't stand up here and say at some point you won't have somebody who's parked the car too far away from the curb, has parked the car parallel to the gate. Again, if you park too far from the curb, that's a violation. Chief is wiping his face. If you park more than how many inches away from the curb, that's a violation. I know because I've gotten a ticket for doing that before. If you park in the middle of the street, that's a violation, can be dealt with. Again, we have those situations where typically you get it. Again, that's not to say that you wouldn't have some rare, unusual situation in the future. I can't promise that. But it would be no different than anywhere else in the community.
Yeah, my only concern is, at the moment, we don't have a problem. But if you take away the no parking zone, you could potentially be creating one. But I get that you're not saying, but you're implying that this situation won't be any worse than it is anywhere else.
Won't be any worse than it is anywhere else. Again, I think the bigger concern we have is that folks just ignore it.
Yeah, that's the
Park down
problem
the
I'm
middle of
thinking
the
about.
street to begin with, and that's more likely. Again, I will say there is a disadvantage to this, which is that people can't park in front of their homes, which then means they're parking in front of the neighbor's house. The neighbor doesn't like the fact that they're parking in front of their house. You do get those issues, so it's part of it as well.
Okay, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Mr. James, I remember that parking situation. It was not placed in there for the emergency vehicles. It was a water flow. That's the only reason why we put the no parking.
It was primarily because of the water issue.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think at times people had concern about, again, vehicles parking or which way the gates swing. The gates pull out laterally.
Right.
So there's not an issue with the swing.
Right,
either
they
way.
thought the cars impeded the flow of the water.
That's right.
And basically, it wasn't. The water still flowed
That-
based
that's-
on the curve. So it was not due to emergency vehicles. So I think the drainage issue has been addressed, and I think it warrants the removal
Yes, sir.
of the signs. All right, council, do I have a motion to approve item number 6?
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilmember Brown, second by Councilmember Dalla. Any other comments?
Correct.
I'm sorry, clarification, Councilmember Scagliola seconded. Okay, any other comments? If none, call for the vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objections, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, resolution number 20R18, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing a contract with Alamo City Constructions Incorporated related to the 2018 spam rehabilitation project and authorizing the budget expenditures for the project. Mr. Novak, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have a prepared presentation. I'm here and happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Okay, council, floor is open for discussion.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 20R18.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments? If none, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. Move on to item number 8, resolution number 20R19. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing a contract with Fukuri Incorporated related to the 2018 span resurfacing project and authorizing the budget expenditures for the project. Okay, Mr. Novak, you have the floor again.
Once again, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 20R16.
Second.
Okay, have a motion by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Dalla. Council, any comments, questions? None, call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objections, motion passes. We'll continue to item number 9, ordinance number 20T04. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an adjustment to the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget to provide funding for the East Live Oak Pump Addition project, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing an effective date. Okay, Ms. Williams, you have the floor.
Very much. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the transference of money from the existing water and sewer reserves into the East Live Oak Pump Additions project. And to acclimate you, I'm sorry this is hard to see, but you'll see the little blue bubble toward the top of the map, and that is where this project is located. It's between FM 309 and Schertz Parkway on Live Oak. We have existing structure there, a fenced-in property with an elevated storage tank, some ground storage tanks, and pumps. And the purpose of this project is the pumps are located in that little red box. And what those pumps serve are the north and the south parts of our water infrastructure, our town. Those pumps are becoming aged over time, and so of course we can expect possibly some failures. We have had some failures in the past. And during high peak times, those pumps operate nonstop, 24/7, particularly in the summertime. So what the purpose of this project is to do is to create some redundancy and some resiliency into our water system. And we want to install pumps that would both serve the north bank and the south bank. So if there is a failure, we have some backups. But also, most importantly, we want to prolong the pumps by alternating some of that pumping system so they don't run nonstop. This project was approved by City Council, and so what we're asking you to do is to approve the funds that will actually, so we can pull the trigger on beginning construction of this project. If I can answer any other questions, I'm happy to.
Okay, council, floor is open for discussion. Discussion?
Just one question, is this project as a result of any kind of requirements by TCEQ or anybody, or is it just good prudent planning practices?
Improvement plan.
Okay, council, do we have a motion to approve ordinance number 20T04?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments, questions? None. If not, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objections, motion passes. We'll continue with the roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide the roll call vote confirmation. Ms. Dennis?
Yes, consent agenda items 1 through 5, with the correction on the resolution as noted, page 26 of the resolution 20R13. A motion was made by Councilmember Dalla, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 6, ordinance number 20D03. Motion was made by Councilmember Brown, seconded by Councilmember Scagliola. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 7, resolution number 20R18. A motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 8, resolution number 20R16. Motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 9, ordinance number 20T04 on first reading. Motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Davis, Councilmembers Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. We'll continue with the workshop. Item number 10 is a work session on potential acquisition of properties in Freeway Manor. Mr. James will provide us information regarding this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff or council probably recalls we came back to you a couple months ago to you to talk about the Freeway Manor subdivision. That's what we call a paper subdivision up off I-35. And we call it a paper subdivision because while the plat was filed, the infrastructure wasn't put in. And so it's a subdivision on paper, but it's not actually there in the ground. There's some kind of gravel pathways through parts of it where the streets are supposed to be. There are some structures out there that some have power, some appear to have water. We have a few with water accounts tied to them. But frankly, it's been an area that has been a challenge for years, if not decades, because of the lack of infrastructure and because the plat was filed. Folks are able to buy and sell those individual lots and those individual properties as they see it. And folks may have the impression that they can buy it, build a house, do whatever they want with it. They may have the impression that it's not located within the city of Schertz, and so again, they can buy it and do what they want with it. And I'll really just go through using the dot cam to talk to you a bit. So again, it's up off IH-35. Outlined is Freeway Manor subdivision. We have our elevated storage tank up in this area, and this is the subdivision. But again, you see the lots on paper. Those streets are not there going forward. So a couple things I'll walk through, and you received this in your packet. So the property is all zoned general business. But again, one of the issues, when it was platted initially, the intent was to develop single-family homes there. 35 wasn't what it was at the time, 60 years ago. So the zoning is general business, not residential. But our impression very clearly is that there are folks living out there. I will use that sort of segue. Council had two issues really at the time. The initial question was about the city perhaps acquiring properties as they came up for sale, but that frankly prompted a lot of discussion about the issues we have out there in terms of code enforcement, folks building without permits, trash and debris, things like that occurring. I will say that staff has been meeting to talk about that, to develop a game plan, and frankly the first step has been to get a handle on what's actually out there. As I noted in the staff report, the map that includes that structures we pulled from the appraisal district website, but that's not actually accurate. Some of those spots that show structure, there isn't one, and there's a few pocketed throughout. So we anticipate coming back to you in the future to talk about a game plan going forward, but really what we need to do is get a handle on what's out there. Part of the challenge in doing that is there aren't pathways to drive vehicles through the entire area, and so it's been folks going out. But the first step really has been to document what's out there, understand the nature of the issues, have that game plan to come back, so we will come back with you. But what prompted us to come back on this one now is because, as some of you know, properties are coming up for sale. And so one of the issues is, in light of the kind of tone of the last discussion of, really the city is probably going to need to step in with a long-term vision to acquire properties to solve this, did we want to let more and more properties change ownership hands and perhaps folks buy those thinking they could do something with them that they can't because of the lack of infrastructure? So we essentially increase the problem we're having with code violations out in the area, frustration of property owners, and perhaps increase our cost to acquire properties down the road. So when we spoke about it before, there were some questions from council, and we said, let us go back and pull some information. So that's sort of the point of this, and I'll answer questions. So again, the property is zoned general business. The city owns about 51 properties out in Freeway Manor, and I don't know if Brian can adjust it, or Mark, who's back there, to pick up the whole picture in the dot cam. But this gives you a feel for the properties that we own that are out there right now. So we own them sort of scattered throughout the property or throughout the development. One of the things, though, where there are some other property owners who have taken to acquiring properties, and aside from the city, these are sort of the top property owners, and again, these are in your packet, but we've obviously got a property owner that started acquiring a few of them near the frontage of 35 that are some of the major owners. The orange has some scattered throughout, and then you've got a few people at the back that have acquired a few properties that are contiguous next to one another. But as you can see, the bulk of the properties are owned not by a few individuals. We do have some of property owners that own more than one piece, but again, it's not a whole lot. Most of the properties are owned by a bunch of different individuals out there that we have with the graphic. As I mentioned, per the CAD, this is what they show where structures are present. We know that's not accurate. Again, when we come back to talk about code enforcement efforts, we'll indicate which ones have a structure and which of those structures, frankly, are attached to the ground as opposed to being a mobile home or an RV that may not be set properly. The other thing I wanted to point out is a little bit, what does the city's vision say? We've had discussions about the need to update our comprehensive plan, but what generally it currently indicates is that the back portion would be residential, consistent with the adjacent neighborhood, and then the frontage would be commercial. But again, that's a designation on the comp plan. The other thing to point out is there is a future roadway that is to run through this location, the future east-west collector. For those of you who were here when we updated the thoroughfare plan, the concept is we don't want everybody having to get on 35 or the frontage roads or jump way back to Wiederstein. If you do that, you've got this big mess, this big challenge. It can't accommodate all the traffic. So what you really want is a road a little ways off the frontage road that serves to kind of diffuse some of that traffic. And so that's the point of that east-west connector that runs up through there and why we have that. You don't have that, it overloads the other areas. If there's an accident on 35, you're having folks drive throughout the community trying to find an alternate way around it. And again, typically with the commercial uses, you want that additional capacity to serve all of those trips associated with that. Couple other maps to knock through, and there were some questions about the values of the property. Again, typically the property's value is based on where it's located. Obviously, as you would expect, the properties closer to the frontage road have a higher appraised value than the properties at the back. There's some variation a little bit on those. Again, it may be due to some improvements that are on those as well that affect the valuation of the properties that we've got. But again, to remind you, by our count, and again, I think Councilman Davis took the initiative on his own, and again, it may be a slightly different number, but through the GIS in terms of distinct parcels, there are about 245 or so. We own about 50 of them, leaving almost 200 remaining. A more conservative estimate, we think, is that the total value of it's just about under $3 million, we would guess. Again, we have about $500,000 worth of properties, and then the remaining $2.5 million. Though, again, as we talk about the city acquiring it, those values are likely to change over time. If the city does initiate an effort to acquire properties, likely the price we would pay when word gets out and we've acquired a whole lot of properties toward the end, as you tend to pay more for those properties going forward. So that's the situation that we've got out there. Again, I want to be clear. We're still not entirely clear on where folks may be getting water, how sewer is occurring out there. We have had some contact with some of the property owners, and as expected, a couple of them go, yep, got a septic system, here it is, going forward. But again, we want to make sure we fully understand those things as opposed to making an assumption and being incorrect. And again, part of our challenge is frankly just getting out to be able to maneuver along all the rights of way to check all the properties fully. But I will say that the police department, code enforcement have spent a lot of time doing that, making sure that we can document it, because you don't want to say, what do I remember? You want to be able to point to pictures and things like that. Again, they've had a couple of conversations with property owners. Where we have seen violations actively occurring, we have interceded. So again, there was a property owner attaching or constructing a carport, some sort of cover, issued a stop work order on that, some clearing and grading that talked to the property owner, in fact, had them in. But again, what we want to do is get a handle on the stuff that we know is a violation, junk vehicles, debris, before we approach that. So at this point, what staff really wanted to do is our impression coming away is you said, yeah, this problem with code we need to tackle it. It's gone on long enough. It's too big an issue. We need a game plan and we need to approach it. So we're still working on that. The other feeling we came away with is that generally council felt that there's merit to the city restarting its efforts to acquire those properties going forward, because if we don't, it's likely no one will pick up enough of the properties and we will always have challenges out there going forward. And so the city can really take that long-term vision, and wanted to get an initial feel. If that's the case, what we will do is come back next meeting in 2 weeks with active direction. We've got a couple of things we want to do with. One is, how do I want to be able to act quickly in terms of what funding source to acquire properties? But the other is, particularly with the city's limited general fund, we probably don't want to start pumping in a lot of money from general fund to the acquisition. So want to look at other sources, want to look at some point if they're bonding options or EDC or something like that. And at such point where the city says, all right, we want to fully take ownership, we then, use dollars to do that. So we want to explore those options, but this was really to make sure we got it right from council that, yeah, we really want you to come back with a proposal. We may not like it, we may balk at that point, we may want you to go a different way, but yeah, we want you to put the time into a plan to acquire, come back to us, and let's not let this problem continue, and let's not let properties continue to sell and the problem exacerbate itself. And so if
Thank you, Mr. James. Council, floor is open for discussion. Councilmember Brown?
Just a point of reference here, these lots have turned over in a lot of cases over the years, and just recently, last year, we've had 3 sell over there, ranging from $8,500 to $51,000. If we allow the money launderers to continue buying and selling, they're going to become out of our reach to purchase at a fair market value. Because fair market value is probably realistically very low thousands, but there's
yeah, and I think that's why I think we're a little surprised how often properties seem to be turning over. Again, was pointed out a property that was currently up for sale. We reached out to the broker on it to understand. In fact, he said, yeah, the closing was pending, as we understand that the close occurred. Again, made clear, letting you know there are challenges in that area, whether folks can actually do what they want to do. You really ought to reach out to the city and ask. So I think that's why we're coming back in light of that turning over.
Because you see the remarks, they say that zoned residential and commercial, which is absolutely wrong.
That's correct. And our
misleading and whatnot.
Yeah, and to be clear, our GB district, it's a commercial district. You are not allowed by right to have a residential use there. We don't, with the exception of the Main Street mixed-use district, that's the only district that allows both single-family residential uses and commercial uses in it. And so, yeah, it's a challenge.
Councilmember Dollar?
Real quick, I don't know if you mentioned it at the last discussion or not, but have we looked at what is the total acreage of the aggregate lots?
We have. So the summary in terms of the total acreage, and it's in the package, but it's 30, let me pull it up, I've got it here. The total, including the right-of-way, the acreage is about 67 acres. Okay. And then you lose some with the right-of-way is about 17 total out of that. And then you've got what the city owns minus that.
All right. And then you mentioned some water accounts being tied to some of these properties. Is that just along the frontage road, or are we servicing them way back in the back?
No, we're serving folks further back as well. I think we have 3 accounts. One's up at the frontage, 2 are toward the back. But there appear to be more structures that are being inhabited than those 2 accounts. And so part of, again, what we need to work through is how are people actually getting water? Again, is there some other source that we're not aware of? Have they tapped into another property? Is one of those people with accounts actually then connecting other folks to them? That's what we're trying to get a handle on. But again, to be frank, what we want to do is reach out to folks in advance and say, hey, this is what we're coming out to try to do. This is where we think we're going to head eventually. so that, one, we're real clear on folks where we think we're likely headed with this effort, what kind of things we need to deal with, but at the same time have some information to be able to give some answers to them so we don't send them into a panic and go, yeah, I don't know yet, and kind of created some antagonism.
Where's the water that's supplying those two accounts coming from? Is there a pipe in the ground, or are they getting it from
Now,
Belmont?
there's a pipe in the ground that runs up Holly Lane. So it comes down Holly and goes back to them.
Right. And the,
And we have the addresses of those. I don't have it with me at the moment. but
that's fine.
We know whose those are.
the properties that you said have septic,
We know at least one has septic because we've been out and talked to the owner. There was some clearing and grading. We said, hey, we're from the city. You know, you're in the city limits. You can't do this without approvals. He, in fact, came in and had a conversation, you know, about trying to do what he wants to do and doing the right thing. And in the course of the conversation indicated that he was on a septic system. Because, again, this was platted decades ago and before the city was out there, before we have records. And so that's part of why it's taken us a while and we're moving cautiously, is we don't want to assume they're on septic. You know, we would not be surprised to find a variety of situations out there.
so I guess my question would be is, how long has the county required, you know, half-acre lot size, or if that's still in Guadalupe County, right?
So it splits in terms of the county lines. You can see on the graphic, the front part is Comal, but the bulk of it is Guadalupe County. And so, yeah, one of the questions is, how long has the county required that, and how long have the folks been out there? One of the challenges for the city is that, you know, we've had this conversation, is we may be able to go back through aerial photos and kind of say, well, it looks like a structure came in this year to this year, but we don't know for sure. So, yeah, the problem is we don't have records. One of the likely kind of bits of legwork the city will do as part of this larger effort is go to the county and say, hey, I need records of what sewer permits do you have for anybody out here, or what records do you have for anybody that's out there. Again, they may say, this is what we've got. They may say, yeah, that stuff's so old, I don't have anything on it. That's, again, why this is just where it's taken us a while to kind of get through. But, again, the first step has really been, so it sounds, just figure out what's out there, and that's been a challenge.
And I guess my final question is, are we providing them with trash pickup service as part of them
To
being?
my knowledge, we aren't. Again, it's not clear to me that we've got anybody running up there for trash service on those two water accounts. Again, if you're in the city limits, we you know, if you ask for it, we have to provide you trash service. So even if you don't have a water account, because we have a few of those, we have a few people not on a water account, not on a sewer account, that if they say, hey, I want trash pickup, we would give it. I don't believe we're picking up anybody out there at all. Because typically those situations are rare, so normally there's a lot of confusion as to how to deal with it, frankly, and it kind of rises up, and we go, wait, no, we got to do this. So I don't think we are. Again, if you were to go out there, evidence is that people are dumping a lot of stuff. I'm not sure it's the folks living out there. There's clearly people driving in to dump truckloads of stuff.
All right, thank you.
Council, any other questions? Councilmember
I just
Hayward?
have one, actually, a statement is working on code enforcement to get that done and going forward, because if you look at Google Earth and the paid version, you see that there's just piles of trash and piles of junk that not only does it, you know, it looks bad, but it causes other problems with rodents and that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I live close to this, and there have been some sketchy situations, or kids coming out and trying to access internet from, you know, homes in that area. And I just think it's something that we need to look at and get it cleaned up. And I know it's going to probably be a process so that it doesn't get too out of control.
No, I agree with you, Councilwoman, and I think everybody on staff understands that. Again, as I said last time, this is one that we just frankly had turned a blind eye to and we need to deal with. For what it's worth, just how serious we are about taking care of it. You know, part of the thing is, as a city, we need to pick up the what's dumped in the right-of-way, and we need to pick up what's dumped on city property. So it's real hard for us to go out and start cracking down on other folks, and they're going, wait a minute, don't you own that piece with that stuff on it? So there's that element that we need to deal with, and there's probably a significant cost to doing that, but it's understanding what's on our property that both we have the obligation and the authority to pick up. It's probably, as we understand the magnitude of what's out there, again, I'll go back, as I think I mentioned in kind of what we did often in San Antonio, is you got a lot of people that aren't going to have the means to be able to pay to get this stuff out of there, so we're going to have to work with the attorney to say, all right, what things can we do as sort of a neighborhood cleanup kind of thing that you do in areas where we bring a roll-off dumpster and the neighborhood can come dump stuff in, kind of like the shredding we do or the household hazardous waste pickup a couple times a year, but out there for folks so that they can kind of help themselves, to get it cleaned up, and then at that whatever point going to an enforcement action to get it done from there. So again, it's probably a step process to get voluntary compliance. But again, the first step is probably going to be us cleaning our stuff up. It's identifying what's ours and what's out there.
Dr. Brown?
Yeah, so just to kind of expand on that, the code enforcement, they have gone out and photographed all the properties. And so that was the first thing that needed to be done. That takes quite a bit of time. And then, so we're going to have a phased approach. We want to clean up our right-of-way and our properties. And so that will probably be the next thing that we're going to do. And then finally, we'll work on the private property owners. So as Brian said, it's going to be expensive for us to clean up our part. But we're actively working on it, and so we are making progress.
Hey, Council, any other questions? Councilmember Hayward?
So actively cleaning up what we own in the right-of-ways. Will there be a way, because I know some of the properties are probably single here, single there, will there be a way to, once you clean it up, to keep someone from dumping on it so you're not having the reprieve process?
So that's part of the issue we have as well. Part of the challenge that we've got with this whole exercise is, I'll be blunt, even to get into some of the areas to clean up, we're going to have to probably do some clearing. Well, once we clear it, if we've not found some solution to dissuade people, folks go, oh, look, there are more areas to dump now. And so likely, as soon as we can clean it up, it's a problem. And so those are things we're working on as well. What's the game plan that we do in terms of, likely signage that's out there, likely cameras that are placed out there. It's probably with the property owners that we've made contact with that would like this thing to happen, that they know who to call quickly if this thing keeps appearing. Probably it's kind of how do we post people out there at times to kind of catch people and get the word out and things like that. And so you're right. We've had a lot of discussions about we don't want to do an action too quickly, again, without really understanding it, and then we turn around and 2 weeks later you've got a bunch of new stuff dumped, and it's this revolving process. So no, we're keenly aware of that.
Okay, Council, any other questions? Councilmember Scagliola?
Yeah, I remember when we first started this initiative, it sounded like a good idea. But we knew for a fact it was going to take a long time to do, if it could get done at all. But if you didn't start somewhere, 10, 15 years down the road, it wasn't going to be any easier. As far as the reserves, to the best of my knowledge, we didn't use our reserves. We used EDC funds to purchase this. And it seemed like a strategy that the EDC embraced at the time. They took a long-range view on it. So we're talking about code enforcement and the residents in the area and cleaning the thing up, but is it still a viable strategy? And I think that's something that needs to be discussed with our EDC. We got a new director, maybe needs to be brought up to speed on this.
I think a couple things. I would agree with you, Councilman. I think a couple things are, one is who ultimately has paid for this in terms of, okay, we've acquired them all and this is who footed the bill and end up footing the bill and we're out of pocket for it. The other is, how do we fund it as we move it forward? And again, do we really want to use general fund dollars for something that we're not going to get to for 20 years? Or do we say, well, let's use EDC dollars to acquire it, but then knowing that the city would purchase it for whatever the cost was or something like that at the end of the day, and then we have the ability to do whatever we might want with it going forward. So yeah, I think those are the options that we want to have floated, and understanding that your willingness to do there probably is contingent upon the dollars. But again, want to get some direction from you and then float it past EDC and get their feeling on it today. Yes, sir.
Well, for what it's worth, it's a long range strategy. And it was good back then. It was founded on solid principles. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, for what it's worth, I still think it's a good idea.
Okay, Council. Other questions? I think that Council's a consensus that we continue the process.
Okay, so likely we'll come back at the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. We'll have fleshed out, here are the options in terms of how we would go forward to fund it or who we need to approach in terms of EDC. And then if the direction is, yeah, those seem viable, probably a short-term approval to be able to acquire some quickly that are for sale while we move forward on that longer-term vision as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. James. We'll continue with our closed session. Item number 11, the City Council will meet in closed session under Section 551.071 of the Texas Governmental Code for private consultation with attorneys regarding potential and contemplated litigation related to the City of Schertz Fire Station number 3. The time is now 6:55. We will reconvene after our discussion. The time is now 7:21. We're back in session after our discussion regarding agenda item number 11 in regards to matters related to the City of Schertz Fire Station number 3. And since there was no action taken on items 10 and 11, there's no need for a roll call confirmation, so we'll continue with the requests and announcements. First, our city manager, Dr. Brown, any further announcements?
No further announcements, Mayor.
Okay. Council members, is there any items you wish to place on future agenda items?
Yes, I have one. I'd like to talk about how to word it, make it very specific. I guess license how do you say that word? Reciprocity, where specifically looking at food trucks, but really not limited to that. Any professional or work required license that the city requires for people to work or conduct business, that if there's opportunities there to kind of lead the region in accepting licenses from other communities as valid in our community. Is that clear? All right.
So, so you're talking about food trucks, and you're asking, do we accept licenses from another city to allow them to operate in our city?
Not if we do, but if we could, and not
Okay.
necessarily just limited to food trucks, but any like-kinded license or certification that we require as a municipality, that other municipalities have the same or identical standards for.
Okay, I got that. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, council members, any others? Okay, we'll continue with the with information providing events attended. We'll go with Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Nothing, sir.
Councilmember Scott, Councilmember Larson,
Nothing.
Councilmember Dalla.
All I did last week is I got a chance to get out to the Chuck Wagon breakfast there on Thursday. That was pretty nice. A little chilly out there, and saw a number of staffers there. Charles and I had breakfast sitting out in the cold, and it was kind of like camping.
Okay, Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, I was out to the Frost Bank also. Thank them very much. And then went down to the trail riders, came to town on their way to rodeo. So thanks to our Parks Department for hosting that event, especially Mary. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Hayward.
Yes, first I'd like to just say that I attended an event on Thursday, and I want to echo what you said, that the staff at the Civic Center did an awesome job. We expected a few people, and they jumped right on it and got chairs in, and we pretty much tripled what we thought was coming, and they made the event go smoothly. I did the Frost Bank Chuck Wagon breakfast. It was cold out, and that was good. I enjoyed it. Loved the biscuits. I did the Trail Riders lunch. I went to the Schertz Civic Center wedding and quinceañera open house. The people they got did a fabulous job in showing what the Civic Center could look like if you wanted to have any of those events. The DJs they had were there. It was a really good event, and I think, more people should come out and look at that. And then I did today the Chamber Leadership Corps, and we did the education tour by going to the school district. We went to Wayland Baptist College and Northeast Lakeview to get a handle on how each area handles their education and what they offer. And that was a good event. That is all.
Councilmember Brown?
Yeah, braved that frost breakfast. It was always fun to see out there and see everybody out there. The trail rider lunch, as usual, has been fun. Didn't realize how long they've been doing it there. It's been great. And I'd like to let Chief Hansen shout out to Officer Kraft for her work with the homeowners associations. They really appreciate the time that she puts into it, so tell her thanks for us.
Okay, as for myself, I attended the Guadalupe County Mayor's meeting. Our discussion centered around the 2020 census and the importance that everybody be counted. This census may realign the precincts, the county precincts, based on the population growth that we have. Also, discussion that as many as maybe 2, maybe 4 congressional seats will be added to the state of Texas. I think the word needs to be passed around that the census is very important, and we need to make sure everybody gets counted. Also attended the Frostbank Chuck Wagon breakfast, had plenty of bacon, loved it. All the bacon I could eat, so I really had enough. The Kirk County Trail Riders Luncheon at Pickerel Park. Thanks for the Parks and Recreation for putting that together. We also went to the NEP Mayor's meeting. The wedding and quinceañera fair. That was very interesting. I actually danced on the floor by myself. There was, but I had fun. And just yesterday, I attended the Association Defense Communities. It was a military city reception at the Alamo. And I had several discussions with other leaders from other communities and the challenges and concerns that they have concerning the bases that are around their communities. The struggles, like I said, the environment, geographical locations, and also, in some cases, political issues. So that was pretty interesting. And that's all I have. The time is now 7:27. We stand adjourned.